Okay, so assuming that that camera doesn't fall off my driver's wheel again, um, I did record a video earlier this morning. I kind of consider the subject too, a little too fluffy, so to speak, about the whole idea like valuing yourself, and I felt kind of getting kind of like not even like woo woo as I would use that sort of term, but just a little too. I mean, for me at least, my focus and all that, my concerns and such. With that, straight back a bit, anyways. But I kind of felt like I was being a little too sort of what's the word I'm trying to look for? It's like the expression generic platitudes. Like I was kind of felt like I was going in that sort of almost vapid direction, especially since I just kind of recorded it, like 10, 15 minutes before I was supposed to go to work because I got up a little bit late. I did get in there early, but it was sort of not in line with my goal of, hey, I'm going to be here by 6:30 every day. That way I can actually like record a video and do that sort of in the style of the uneducated economist. When it's most convenient for me, when I have privacy, when I have a few minutes to collect my thoughts, that sort of a deal, and just kind of be consistent. Because if I'm recording in my car, whether it's before or after work, like I'm there already, I got my camera with me. Let's just go. Let's get this done. That sort of deal. Be consistent and actually turn out content, so to speak. But there are a couple of things I wanted to sort of discuss actually. Um, I wrote down most of these notes when I had some free time at work, but then there was sort of some thoughts that kind of popped in my head. It's almost like shower thoughts, but in my car, I guess you could say. Um, but I wanted to talk about rugged individualism, which I guess is something of like sort of an American philosophical or idealistic position. You can kind of picture the sort of image of the pioneer going out into the wilderness, all on his own, maybe with his family, maybe with a group of other, pioneers. Maybe maybe they're like fur trappers or, mountain men or so. And obviously, like I said, this idealistically speaking, I'm not bringing into consideration all the sort of dark side of a lot of that, but the idea of going off into the wilderness, off into the unknown, and depending upon nothing but yourself and what you can carry on your back, and building something all your own out of, what is not necessarily nothing, but like is not uh, in any way sort of comparable or understandable to somebody living back in sort of the more settled areas where everything's kind of been figured out and set up, and you're going out into the unknown and building for yourself, and then eventually perhaps building a community. But that sort of idea, I was thinking of that in the context of recent events. Plus content I've been watching, and it's had me reflecting on the importance of self-reliance. I think, what was it? It was this one podcast. I think I mentioned the guy's name, talking to Fitzgerald, but, Tim Pool's the guy. But he had like some guests on. He, does this thing where he brings a guest on, and, they said they discuss a topic or a recent event or something like that. But, one of the guys was, I think he was originally from California. He was kind of talking about the whole toilet paper shortage we had a bit ago. It may come back in waves, who knows? But it kind of got him thinking about how fragile everything really is. At least for those of us living in sort of the more, I want to put this in a non in a way that can be taken as condescending, because I'm not really being condescending, or that's not my intention. But what folks might refer to as a developed world, or the quote unquote first world. Where you got the supply chain, you just kind of go to, your Walmart or your Kmart or your grocery store, and you just kind of, okay, I'd like to have some steak today, or I need some toilet paper, or I need some shampoo, or, razor blades, or whatever, or clothes, or, milk, juice, soda, whatever, and you can just kind of pick it up off the shelf and buy it there. And it's sort of like, for a time there, we had, I swear they probably came up with some t-shirts for it. I'm pretty sure somebody has. I haven't looked them up. But, it's kind of funny actually to think about this now. It's almost like the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. It's like, that's the thing you'll remember decades from now. It's like, yeah, back in 2020, we all ran out of toilet paper. How did we survive, Um, but it's this whole idea of like, that he was talking about, that the world as we know it is actually less stable than it, we assumed it to be. That something like that could cause, not only people to like freak out and run and grab a bunch of toilet paper and just stockpile it. You think they'd be stockpiling something else, but they apparently did that, and kind of cornered the market on the people who got there first, and the rest of us, luckily I had my supply, and then I also had some sort of, not on the main sort of flow of the supply chain, but some stores off the beaten path, or kind of like mom and pop shops where they had toilet paper there and you could buy that. But it's sort of this idea of like, you assume that the world works a certain way and it's always going to be like that. And then suddenly something comes along, even if it was for decades or even centuries or whatever, we knew this is going to eventually happen, or these things have happened before and we should be prepared. But, a lot of us weren't prepared. I mean, I luckily was able to get first 2 weeks, and then I upped it up to a month of, food, when, things were really bad. Because I was hearing from coworkers at the time, like, hey, you might want to, stock up on some food and, whatever other supplies, because, they may be going full lockdown, and you won't be able to even go to a store, and blah, 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 that sort of thing. But, this whole need to practice self-reliance, rugged individualism, it appears to be far more relevant, and then, than in other recent times. Obviously, if you talk to, like, maybe not my parents, but I mean, my parents have had some experience like that, like living in the Midwest with like blizzards and tornadoes and stuff like that. And I definitely had, some of that when I was growing up, but definitely you were to talk to my grandparents, or if my great grandparents, or, others before that were still around. I still have my, as it stands, my grandma's still around, and, she lived through the Great Depression, World War II, all of that. And, I mean, they had that experience of, everything kind of falling apart, so to speak. And, you gotta try to get through this tough time, and very much sort of, the world could end at any moment, especially, when the nuclear weapons were eventually invented, and, you had the atomic age, the Cold War, all of that. And it seems like for a significant period of time since then, last 20 years, last 30 years, we've kind of had this sort of mentality brewing of, all the monsters have been killed, all the bad guys have been defeated, in some sense or another. Maybe not entirely, but like to the extent that, we're not like feeling like we're on the brink of like the collapse of all we know. And then this sort of stuff happens, and now it's like, oh, wow, everything could go, and wow, like we should have been better prepared and things of that nature. So I guess just that idea of being prepared. Maybe it's also because I'm an Eagle Scout, and this whole idea of be prepared is very much, I wouldn't say drilled into your head, but you definitely, it's definitely like a foundational principle, and something they teach you, or at least they taught me back in the day when when I was going through Scouts. So, I'm not sure what everyone else's approach is, but, while requisitioning supplies, becoming cognizant of current affairs is necessary, I think something more active, an active approach has to be, or would be better. That's partially why I'm trying to ramp up my, physical fitness, get my money right, that sort of thing. And, I'm kind of building off, I think, with my last video or so, just talking about the importance of that. And yeah, I think that, and I did put it down here basically, but I think one of the things also, if I wanted to, again, I don't want to, this is not really per se a NoFap video, but I'm sure a lot of folks that they're watching my videos is because of, NoFap and the NoFap content that I, made and still continue to make. But I feel like whatever it is that is your sort of addiction or your sort of sedation that you're engaged in, it's almost like the recent events have sort of shown that, you know, that really isn't really feasible or practical anymore. Maybe not as much as, you know, once was. And this sort of idea of like needing to sort of wake up to what is going on in the world, you know, and sharpen yourself, strengthen yourself, become more capable, become more independent, more free in a sense. You know, having more control of the direction of your life, getting your money right, getting your health right, getting your mind right, determining what's important, and, you know, pursuing that, getting your education, your knowledge, etc., strengthened and expanded. And, you know, like me personally, I'm continuing to work on my finances and fitness. You know, as I've said, like finances basically right now it's mostly paying off debt. Um, Obviously, eventually, I would like to get to the point where I could build, you know, equity in index funds and ETFs and all that sort of stuff, and get, you know, passive income. Um, Definitely have savings even before the investing is concerned. You know, having like emergency funds set aside. Um, Excuse me, I haven't eaten in a bit, so maybe my stomach is feeling a bit empty. But anyways, I feel this, you know, need to condition myself for jogging as far as fitness is concerned. You know, 4 times a week is what I would like to do, starting with 1.5 miles. I mean, like the other night when I went jogging, it was kind of like hurting my lower legs. I wouldn't not my shins, not the back, but sort of the front. Maybe it was my running form. Um, but I've also noticed that when I haven't run for a while and I've, you know, started running again, it's just that my body's not used to it. I gotta get reconditioned to that. So eventually, I want to get to aiming for 9 miles, you know, each time I run. So that'd be about an hour and a half jogging, um, which, let's see, that'd be an hour and a half jogging, 9 miles. That would be about, assuming I do like about 15 minutes, you know, per lap, because I'm basically running around the perimeter of my old campus, which is about a mile and a half. Then eventually, when I add in push-ups and body rows, I don't really have like a pull-up bar in the sense of like, you know, sort of a one that's, you know, further up, that's like at the, you know, my height, like let's say 6 feet off the ground or so. I do have these dip bars that I can use for body rows. So, you know, 50 push-ups, 30 body rows, you know, every workout session, and then increase from there. Obviously, doing them with, you know, proper form. Um, Beyond all that, talking about myself, you know, anybody who's watching who would like to comment, you know, what are your thoughts? Like, what are you doing to become better prepared, to become more cognizant? Obviously, for a lot of us guys, part of that process, maybe in the keystone habit that sort of kicks that off, is getting on NoFap. Because, you know, you're not spending your time then looking at pornography, watching it, engaging in that behavior, not sedating yourself with the neurochemical after effects, etc. And you have a whole block of time there, and it's kind of like, okay, so what I'm going to do with this time? And maybe you start looking stuff up, reading up on this, reading up on that, working out, studying, whatever the case may be, maybe putting in more time at work, maybe getting a job and, you know, working, you know, being out there, making that money, that sort of deal. But, you know, I honestly feel like, you know, that's sort of the direction that it would be best to go in. Teach their own. But, you know, like I said, you know, what are your thoughts? I like to hear, you know, my subscribers' thoughts on this topic. Beyond that, there's a couple other things, maybe more than that I want to talk about. But going off of, I think it was a topic of one of Fitzgerald Brown's latest videos. He was talking about social media, and, you know, it's something that I've seen like in the past. He's kind of gone back and forth on it. I have gone back and forth on it myself. I haven't really posted too much about it, I don't think. Maybe I've talked about it, but I haven't made it a subject of a video. But this whole idea of like social media, and you could relate to NoFap, you could just relate it to time management, you could relate it to like your mental, emotional state, whatever the case may be. Honestly, I'm at that point where I finally have like quit all social media outside of YouTube and LinkedIn. And I stay on LinkedIn to me for professional reasons, I'd say 90% of the time. There's that 10% where it's kind of like, you know, I mean, inevitably you're a person, you're a human being, and it is social media, so there's some of that staying connected with old friends or connections or so. Um, and obviously, there's always a temptation to look people up and see where they're at, sort of thing. I try not to, but interesting thing with LinkedIn is that my current job that I have right now, I actually got that through having my LinkedIn profile there, having everything filled out, and then a sourcer from this current company reached out to me, and then she put me in contact with the recruiter one, and I was like, hey, I'm interested in this job, and one thing that led to the next, and had some phone screenings, and I've had the interview, got the job, now I'm working here. So that actually does have some practical value. It's not just me sitting there mindlessly scrolling through and potentially seeing the kind of stuff that could lead me down, a very bad path. Um, but I would say that, like, even then I do try to minimize my time on there, just because, I mean, not only is it social media, but, like, maybe it's like my perspective on a lot of issues in life that manifest, in the workplace, the industry, that sort of deal. Um, I just want to keep it professional and not get into all this other sort of side stuff where it's like, okay, how is this related to my job? How is this related to my finances, my education, my life? Um, I'm not going to go on there and like turn into a soapbox and try to pontificate about this, that, and the other. If I do pontificate about anything or I go off on some sort of soapbox rant or ramble, that'll probably be on here, mostly because I have anonymity, but also because it's YouTube, and in part it is kind of like it's far more for that than, let's say, LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is literally, here's how you can use this social media electronic manner of networking, finding jobs, building connections, that sort of thing. Maybe even like educational, like training for your career, that sort of a deal. So there is actually far more that slant towards, okay, it's about professional development, networking, etc. Whereas YouTube, it's kind of like, it's almost like, maybe it's becoming less and less like this, but compared to, let's say, something like LinkedIn, it's more like the wild west of sorts, where there's far more possibility and far more um, openness to different kinds of content. It's not just solely focused on work and professionalism and professional networking and that sort of deal. Um, but I have quit all the other forms of social media. I think the biggest one I was using was Facebook, and I mean, there were parts of that did kind of overlap with the whole NoFap thing, because you can find stuff on there, and it's really like weird, because then you can find like explicit content on there if you wanted to, but at the same time, like, there's other stuff that I guess it offends the powers that be, or whoever the case may be, but they filter that stuff out, they delete that. Um, and I know they have folks who watch over this sort of stuff, and they a lot of them do the best of intentions, and they do the best job they can, and I'm sure they probably clear out so much stuff that like is way more extreme, and I approve of that, them doing their job. um, but other than the whole that nofap aspect, a lot of it was just like me scrolling through there, wasting time. um, and for a time there, like, let's see, there was a deal with that one girl in particular, and it was like sort of me being on there, posting about my life, posting about what I was up to, things of that nature. Back when I was trying to like impress her, back when she was still part of my sphere of existence, so to speak, and even just other girls or other people, that sort of deal. And it's sort of like, after graduation, I kind of like looked back and was like, wow, that was a real waste of my time, effort, sanity, whatnot. And do I really need Facebook right now? Like, do I really need this? Like, no, I don't, because I don't have the motivation to be going and doing that. Um, I suppose Facebook could be used to build a brand or something like that, but I find YouTube far more useful towards building like an audience, if that's your aim, or just putting content out there, getting your voice out there. Obviously, assuming you're not someone like you're not saying anything too extreme or whatever the case may be, but um, yeah, I found that, like I said, like I was wasting time, and then eventually, even after graduation, it was like I wanted to forget certain people and certain things and certain events, and it would be very, very easy for me to almost like, in some sense, torture myself by going and looking them up on Facebook or looking up this and that on Facebook, and then remembering like, and it's almost like with NoFap, you just stay away from the sort of triggers, I guess you could say, that would send you down that path, down sort of the bad aspects of memory lane, or if you want to talk about NoFap, down the path to PMO. Um, you know, Especially when you're just, like I said, just wasting time, putting yourself through a bad emotional state, and you kind of realize that like you're doing it all to yourself after a certain point. It's not them doing it to you anymore, and the question is why? Because I mean, I know it probably has an effect on your health if your blood pressure's up so much and you're gritting your teeth and you're feeling like, in the doldrums all the time. And if you're doing it to yourself and you've got control over it, it's like, come on, dude, like, stop, that sort of thing. Um, so that's like those are so many of the reasons why I eventually quit it. And besides, like, the people I need to stay in contact with, I got my phone, they know my phone number, it's mostly my family. Um, any friends out there, well, they can probably contact me through LinkedIn because I do have connections with them, and, there's that. Um, Beyond that, most of it's like work email and Slack. And those are coworkers. If they need to Slack me, hey, I went to lab XYZ, uh, got things set up, got here, let's get started. Or I can Slack them, hey, I'm in this lab, they just delivered whatever parts we need to build, see you there, whatever, that sort of thing. I don't really have a need for Facebook. I don't have a need for these other social media outlets. And besides, it's really not geared towards like someone maybe in my age bracket, my gender, my aims, whatever. It's not useful. It's not useful for me. And as such, like I feel that, and again, this may be my age, might be my gender, might be my leanings or my perspective or whatever. But I see most social media as a waste of time. Um, there are some out there that you could use, find that are useful, like LinkedIn, like YouTube. I'm not saying all of them are, but most of them are. And this kind of leads me into my sort of closing thoughts. That most of what we think matters doesn't, and most of what we think doesn't matter does. And it's sort of like a final reflection because I think back over the last 3 to 5 years and all the stuff I thought would make a difference, how I dressed, how I acted, how I carried myself, how hardworking I was, how successful I was, how helpful I was to certain people in particular, how I displayed competency or character or what have you to certain folks. It didn't matter. Um, and sitting here worrying about what certain folks think of me, what they're up to, whether or not they'll like me, not like me, getting myself all bent out of shape over it. And I hope that I actually listen to this sort of wisdom of that I'm sort of I'm sure I'm probably regurgitating it. Somebody's probably told me this, at some point in my life, and might have been my dad, might have been, might have been my sister, might have been, an uncle, or maybe my grandparent, or might have been somebody on here like Dark Magician. um, but getting myself bent out of shape about that is literally a waste of time. And truth is, like, the best way forward, the best way of building a brighter future for myself, or the best way of building a brighter future for ourselves, individually, collectively, etc., is to really focus on what actually matters. Like, I think that's one thing with 2020 that I learned was I had to focus on what mattered. Like I used to like to go out fencing, and I would definitely want to go back doing that eventually. But even when they were still open, I was also planning on getting involved with this, martial art. In addition to that, want to travel, all that sort of stuff. But even while they were open, and I started sort of looking at my finances, looking at the money situation. Reading Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, etc. Like I sort of was realizing financially what matters, and then of course pandemic hit, all these lockdowns, and it was just like, okay, the way I'm gonna get through this mentally, even just to not like be freaking out, getting stir crazy, getting depressive, or whatever the heck the case may be, or at least striving against that. Whether or not it happened, which it did happen at various points, but the way I'm gonna mitigate that, like managing risk, I'm gonna mitigate this, is to focus on what I have control over, focus on what's important, and work on that. Like getting myself out of debt. I was able to pay off 5 out of the 9 open student loan accounts last year. I got that done. So I felt like, okay, I got something done. I got something out of 2020, so to speak. I started paying down my well, I was already paying it down, but continuing to pay down my car loan. Getting my education restarted, after I graduated with my bachelor's, and then working towards getting back in for a master's degree, etc., etc. Now focusing on fitness, trying to learn how to program automated liquid handling robots, etc. You got to figure out whatever that is for you, and just work on that. I mean, I would say you guys can choose to do what you want to do, but I would say find out whatever that is for you, work on that, so that some of things either A, get worse, or they just stay the same, or something like this does happen again, and we will all be better prepared and better sort of cognizant and aware of how to handle things and such, individually and collectively. And I think that's the best way forward. And again, if you want to relate that to NoFap, in many ways PMO is sedation, puts you to sleep, kind of makes you feel like everything's A-okay, and you don't got to really do any work or make any effort, that sort of deal. And when you start stepping away from that, obviously you go through all the withdrawal effects, but if you work your way through it, figure a way forward, that sort of deal. And I've kind of talked about possible ways of doing that in other videos. I could talk about that in another video, but eventually you will get to a point where you're kind of standing on your own 2 feet, and you can really start getting that sort of work done of strengthening yourself, and being better prepared. So anyways, I've rambled on for long enough, and my camera is almost out of power. So thanks for watching. Thanks for the likes, the comments, the subscriptions. I hope this content's helpful to somebody out there. But anyways, I will see you folks around, and yeah, thanks. Bye.